Matt, you went viral, actually, this afternoon, speaking on the BBC. We're going to be crossing live there in a second because there's a protest gearing up, getting ready to go. What do you think about the BBC's handling of this situation?
I don't think it's been great. I think the refusal to refer to Hamas as a terrorist organisation, a group that is prescribed by the state for being a terrorist organisation, a group that 66% of all voters in this country think is a terrorist organisation, which clearly, based on the actions last week, is a terrorist organisation. I don't think really that looks good at all. And actually, the BBC's claim that it doesn't describe groups as terrorist, it merely describes how other people describe those groups, is not true either. Footage has emerged today of the BBC's response to 9/11, where it was quite explicit in referring to some groups as terrorist organisations. And I think what concerns people within the British Jewish community in particular, I think, is this sense that when it comes to British Jews, there is a sort of a double standard that is applied, that they're not taken as seriously as other minority communities. And I was looking at the protests over the weekend in London, you know, where you had people chasing a man who was waving a flag of Israel, threatening to beat him up and behead him. You had young women with paraglider badges on, which is glorifying terrorism. And I think many British Jews were looking at this and thinking, how on earth is this happening in Britain in 2023? And if that protest had been, you know, involving members of a far-right group or expressing support for any other form of extremism or tacit support for that form of extremism, we wouldn't have tolerated it for a second.
You see, I saw the graphic that you're talking about, those girls that had the paragliding thing on their back, and I couldn't quite work out, has someone just gone up behind them and shoved that on their back? Did they know that that was on their back? Because
But don't forget, it came hours after Black Lives Matter put out a poster, the Chicago chapter of the paragliders.
But the point Michelle's making is they might not even have known that they were on their backs.
Well, what I'm trying to get at is I cannot comprehend that an individual would really seriously sit there and think it's a good thing that someone has paraglided into innocent people and slaughtered them. I can't get my head around anyone.
I don't think...
How do you struggle with that when so many people supported 9/11 in parts of the world? They were celebrating and clapping. So let's not downplay it.
Surely not that brave. It's short to go out onto a London street in broad daylight, knowingly, with that sellotaped onto you. Maybe I'm just being a little bit too kind to people's mentalities, but...
I think there is a huge danger here, and I think because tensions are and have historically always been quite delicate. I mean, at the weekend, there was red paint thrown over the BBC at New Broadcasting House, apparently by a pro-Palestinian organisation claiming that their report was, or reporting was biased. Tonight, there's the protest there organised by a Jewish group. So, you know, if you've got two groups saying you're getting your coverage wrong, then probably you're going right through the middle. I think many people find it difficult to understand because Hamas is a prescribed organisation in this country, so therefore it is illegal. I think that is one of the difficulties in the BBC's stance, but I completely appreciate that when they've got people out in the field, as you have with Charlie Peters, you need to be absolutely unbiased in order to have access, in order to come up with the impartial, proper reporting that is valued around the world.
But is stating facts biased? You tell me at home. I'm going to cross. We've been speaking about the BBC, so let's cross live. Our reporter, Theo Chikomba, he is live there now. Good evening to you, Theo. Oh, he hasn't. He was there, and now he's not. So I will show you some live shots there from outside. Oh, everything's gone as well. OK, that's not a problem. Yes, he was. We shall carry on the conversation here then anyway. So this is a protest that's been organised by the National Jewish Assembly, basically. And to the point we've just been discussing, they are accusing the BBC of this continued bias. And this, I mean, I did show you a clip just before the break. You can see that there is an awful lot of people now gathering. Tempers and emotions, of course, are running high. Now, you might have seen the coverage. I saw it whilst I was off. I think it was Sheffield Town Hall or something. Someone had put an Israeli flag and then somebody had kind of took the Israeli flag down and replaced it with a Palestinian one. And I was watching that thinking it didn't even feel real. I mean, I know it was real, but it didn't feel real. And this is what I'm saying. I don't know if I am just being a little bit too kind to the mindset of certain people, because in this day and age, how can you sit and feel that actually it's okay for me to side with, for whatever reasons, for whatever reason, whatever motivations, with people that are behaving in such a horrendous, awful, unimaginable way? And I just can't believe that it's happening. And I'll be interested to see whether or not there's any counter-protests to the one that's about to occur outside the BBC.
I'm not surprised it's happening at all. I mean, I heard the fireworks and the celebrating on Edgware Road in London in the aftermath of the attacks in Israel. We know from surveys that about between 2 and 6% of Britain's Muslim communities sympathise with Islamist terrorists. We know that from the surveys. The Community Security Trust this week has said there's been a 300% increase in anti-Semitic incidents in the UK. And we know that British Jewish children are being told not to show symbols of their faith when they're walking to and from school. So the reality is we do have a problem with anti-Semitism in Britain, which I would argue is mainly coming from an assortment of far-left activists and radical Islamists who have a very warped view of Jews and of Israel and of Hamas. And so if we were upholding the British law, people who express sympathy for Hamas, like those 2 girls at the demonstration, if indeed they put the signs on themselves, they should be treated like supporters of ISIS. There's no fundamental difference between ISIS and Hamas. There is no fundamental difference.
And that has been made very clear by the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary, that anybody who is supporting Hamas, the proscribed terror group, is breaking the law. That doesn't preclude you and shouldn't preclude you from supporting the Palestinian people, who are not all Hamas, and they shouldn't be lumped together. And there will be many people, we've just seen several minutes given to a woman whose view of Israel was her own view. That's fine. There's no balance against that, unless you've got somebody coming up to talk to us from Gaza. But I think, it is a very, very emotive topic for all sorts of very understandable reasons. But I think, there has always been the difficulty that you can be, and in fact many people in Israel have been deeply, deeply opposed to Benjamin Netanyahu. And, you could argue that actually because he had fractured democracy in the one democratic country in the Middle East, he was probably caught napping, which allowed the terrorists to attack. That will never probably come up. But there has always been a problem, I think, for some people to think that they cannot criticise Israel and what Israel does for fear of being accused of being anti-Semitic.
Well, yeah, but that's a simple thing. For example, do you think Jeremy Corbyn, who is a former party leader of the Labour Party, a very prominent national politician, should he have come out after the attacks and unequivocally condemned Hamas?
He doesn't speak for the Labour Party, he speaks for himself.
But do you see the frustration that many British Jews would have?
Yes,
Here is a former leader of a mainstream party who could currently be Prime Minister if he'd won the last general election.
But that's ridiculous. That's whataboutery.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't whataboutery.
He couldn't be Prime Minister because he lost the election. He's expelled from the Labour Party and he is no longer
What you're
leader.
saying, though, what you're saying is that these suggestions are fringe. And what I'm saying is they're not. I'm saying anti-Semitism is still in the lifeblood of mainstream British society, and it should be Jeremy Corbyn.
And Jeremy Corbyn did a lot of damage to the Labour Party, which Keir Starmer has dealt with swiftly and appropriately, and has been applauded by leading Jewish Labour MP Margaret Hodge and Luciana Berger, who, as you remember, left the Labour Party and joined the Liberal Democrats, and has now praised Keir Starmer for what he's done.
So Jeremy Corbyn should condemn Hamas?
Jeremy Corbyn is his own person. He doesn't speak for the Labour Party.
You don't think he should condemn...
Jeremy Corbyn does not speak for the Labour Party.
He's a Labour Party member, though, isn't he?
No, he's been expelled.
And
No,
if he
I
runs for
thought
London,
he was still in the party, but he'd lost the whip.
This is where I
No,
think
he's been expelled
this
from
is where
the
I think
Labour
the double
Party. He
standards
sits as an
come in.
independent. He may not even be. He won't be allowed to stand as a Labour Party candidate at the next election.